CEO Jim Hackett saying the company began a restructuring program 2 years ago and the cuts are not due to the pandemic. This is USA Radio News.
Okay, some good news during a challenging time for everybody, and this could really help. You may know hundreds of thousands of people have already made the switch to Medi-Share, which is the affordable alternative to health insurance. And with so many people looking at how they pay for healthcare right now, seeing premiums going up or the cost of COBRA plans, Medi-Share has extended their special offer, and a lot of people have taken advantage of it. Simply apply by September 30th, and they will waive your new member fee. That's $170 savings. And of course, that's just a start. The typical family saves $500 a month after making the switch. Medi-Share is a Christian community that shares each other's healthcare costs, and it's worked beautifully for decades. I'll give you the number here in a second, and if you call, you can get a price within 2 minutes. Just tell them the promo code SHARE to get your additional savings. Here it is. Call 833-34-BIBLE. That's 833-34-BIBLE. 833-34-BIBLE.
It was a historic moment when an Israeli delegation arrived in Abu Dhabi to hammer out the details of a peace agreement between Israel and the UAE. USA Radio Network's John Clemens reports.
The sound of the shofar, a ram's horn, at the St. Regis Hotel in Abu Dhabi was the signal for the beginning for the talks as the Israeli delegation met with UAE negotiators. In Jerusalem, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke about the normalization, calling it a historic day, a joyous day for all citizens of Israel, a day of victory for the doctrine of peace for peace.
Kentucky Republican Senator Rand Paul has called to subpoena Antifa plane records, hotel records, and all travel records along with funding. You're listening to USA Radio News.
Now you can fly anywhere in the world and pay discount prices on your airline tickets. Book a flight today to London, Paris, Madrid, or anywhere else you want to go and pay a lot less guaranteed. Call the International Travel Department right now at Low Cost Airlines.
800-215-5141. 800-215-5141. That's 800-215-5141.
Opening a Democratic-led House hearing, House Majority Whip James Clyburn says Congress needs to act to support the economy and the American people.
The most important step we can take to fix the economy in the long term is to get the pandemic under control. But American families are hurting now, and there are urgent steps the administration must take to prevent our nation's economic crisis from becoming a catastrophe.
Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, testifying before that committee, agrees with the congressman and says the president is ready and willing to act.
I want to emphasize the president and I do support additional fiscal response, and we've been working hard to try to get a negotiated agreement on a bipartisan basis.
Florida's governor is firing the company that processed more than 13 million coronavirus tests in the state. Republican Governor Ron DeSantis firing Quest Diagnostics for dumping nearly 75,000 test results Tuesday, some of them months old.
They dumped, I think, 75,000 test results dating back to April. And so it's like, okay, you're required to put this in, and you do it now in this big dump.
More news can always be found, of course, online at usaradio.com or on Facebook as well, at USA Radio. For USA Radio News, I'm Tim Berg.
The following is an America Matters Media production. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of the station or its advertisers, although we think they should. But that's the opinion of America Matters Media.
America spends 5 to 10 times more on health care than any other country in the world. Then why does America rank number 43 worldwide for longevity? Third world countries, such as Cuba and Costa Rica, rank higher than the U.S. So what's wrong with healthcare in America? This is what's wrong. Our $3 trillion healthcare industry is focused on disease management, while 70% of our planet relies on traditional indigenous medicine that is focused on health optimization. Learn how. Join Dr. Dan Royal on the show The Royal Treatment, bringing you the latest information on the best of medicine, biotechnology, and pharmacology, as well as secrets from the past. These secrets have withstood the test of time and are being rediscovered today. In fact, indigenous healthcare practitioners are using them for the benefit of their patients who seek optimal health and wellness. Now, here is Dr. Dan Royal.
Greetings, listeners. I'm Dr. Dan Royal, and you are now listening to The Royal Treatment. We're here every week to answer your health questions. And we thank you for joining us. We also like to thank our sponsors, the Turtle Healing Band Clinic, where I practice here in Las Vegas, also the First Nation Medical Board, which licenses practitioners such as myself who practice what we call traditional medicine. Actually, that's what the federal government has referred to it as. And both of these entities are under the jurisdiction of the Crow Tribe of Indians. Why? Well, the federal government gave them the right to regulate the practice of traditional medicine because they wanted nothing to do with it. So, interestingly enough, there's no state in this country that regulates the practice of traditional medicine, which includes all things alternative, holistic, complementary, and so forth, which has actually been around longer than conventional medicine. In fact, the American Institute of Homeopathy was established before the American Medical Association, but before that comes the Indians, acupuncture, and so forth. So we thank the Crow Tribe of Indians who have actually stepped forward to help regulate the practice of traditional medicine. If you need to reach me here in Las Vegas, you can always call us here at the Turtle Healing Band Clinic at 702-562-1454. That's 702-562-1454. Or you can email me directly at droyal@thbclinic.com. That's D as in Daniel, Royal, Royal, at THB for Turtle Healing Band Clinic.com. Well, today we're going to be talking about naturopathy, one of those traditional forms of medicine I was just mentioning. There are about 23 states in the country that regulate the practice of naturopathic medicine. I mean that they have their own medical boards, but that means there's about 27 states where naturopaths need licensure and protection against, well, the conventional forms of medicine that are not trained in these other medical arts. And that's where the First Nation Medical Board can be of help. Today we'll be talking with Dr. Michael Karfeld, who has a very busy integrated practice in Boise, Idaho. Michael, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you so much for having me here today, Dr. Royal.
Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself. I didn't really say a whole heck of a lot, but I think you could probably explain it a little better in your own words about who you are and where you got to where you are, because I understand you're not just a naturopathic physician, you're also a PhD. You have a doctorate.
Yeah, so I've been practicing naturopathy for about 30, since 87, so about 33 years. So during that time, I've been seeing hundreds of thousands of client interactions. So I run a very busy center here in outside of Boise, Idaho, and Meridian, where we focus quite a bit on integrative oncology, where patients are flying in from a little bit all over the United States, and they are wanting to support the treatment that they're doing traditionally. So if they're doing chemo, radiation, surgery, they want to make sure that they support their immune system, and also to kind of repair the damage done by some of these traditional interventions. So we focus quite a bit on that. We even have a medical oncologist here on staff just to make sure that we interact with the traditional care model appropriately. And in addition to that, we do traditional kind of naturopathic services where patients come with any kind of ailments, and we use nutritional support in order to be able to support the body's own healing mechanism so that it can function on its own instead of being reliant on pharmaceutical drugs.
So there's a couple of ways to treat cancer. You can go the conventional route where we view cancer as a foreign invader that must be destroyed. And in the process, the immune system gets destroyed with the chemotherapy, radiation, suppressive drugs and treatments. Are you saying that in your approach to the treatment of cancer, you provide supportive care, or do you have an alternative approach for these patients?
So we do a little bit of both, and it depends on the comfort level of the patient. So as a naturopathic doctor, obviously, we cannot say that we cure any cancer, nor can we really say that we treat cancer. But what we can do is that we can support the individual where the cancer is in. And that becomes a really important mind shift when you move then from a medical model to a naturopathic model, where you are then looking upon the individual as a whole, rather than looking upon the disease as something isolated from the individual. So what you do in a naturopathic model is that you then focus on the individual in which the cancer is in. And by correcting the imbalances that that individual has, then the environment that the cancer is in shifts, which then makes it harder for the cancer to continue to thrive. And doing it that way, you can really be successful in regards to supporting a body through the journey, or an individual through the journey while they're dealing with cancer. So,
So you're providing supportive care.
Yeah, so with that then, so you can either then work on it directly. I'm supporting an individual and they just want to work holistically. We offer that service, but frequently an individual also would like to combine that with chemo, just because that's their comfort level, or radiation or surgery. And then we use, because obviously chemo, like you mentioned, it destroys the immune system, and chemo will not kill all cancer cells. So after you're done with chemo, you still need to rely on your immune system to mop up the rest. So if you don't have an immune system, then the cancer tends to come back. So.
Okay, well, that's a good explanation. We'll talk more about that after the break. I'm Dr. Daniel Royal. We're listening to naturopathic physician Michael Carlfeld, and we'll continue our discussion right after the break. Stay with us. Would you like to increase your vitality? Disease develops within your body when the metabolic vitality of your cells is altered. Well, now there is a patented device that improves cell metabolism called Cell Vital. Cell Vital has been used for years by successful athletes to prepare for competition and improve performance. This is because Cell Vital increases blood and oxygen to your cells. Call 702-444-LUCKY and order your Cell Vital today. Cell Vital can help with cell regeneration after an activity by reducing stress, as well as be used for treating bruises, sprains, and muscle aches and pains. Cell Vital has also been shown to be beneficial for digestion, PMS, and smoking cessation. Get lucky with your health and call 702-444-5825. Accessories are available to help with specific body parts, such as the eyes, ears, and teeth. Animals too can benefit from Cell Vital for bone, joint, and circulation disorders. Call 702-444-LUCKY and get a free quote for your Cell Vital. That number again is 702-444-5825.
I spend a lot of time in the garage, but even more time in the rain, sleet, and mud. In 95, I helped tow your moving trailer. In 05, I helped you get out of a ditch. Yeah, I know I'm a bit rusty, and sadly in 09, it was sparks from me, your handy chains, dragging behind your truck that accidentally started a wildfire.
Sparks from dragging chains can start a wildfire. Spark a change, not a wildfire. Visit SmokeyBear.com. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
1 in 3 adults in America have pre-diabetes, but most don't know it. To let people know it can be reversed before it becomes type 2 diabetes, professional basketball player Julius Randle is doing everything in reverse.
I'm only dunking with reverse windmills. I drove the whole way to practice in reverse. I don't recommend it. This move's called the reverse shuffle. I do recommend it. And it took me months to learn how to speak in reverse, like this. Years 10 almost for diabetes type 2 with living Ben has mom. In other words, my mom has been living with type 2 diabetes for almost 10 years. So together, we want to say to the 84 million Americans at risk, exercise and healthy eating can help reverse prediabetes. Start by taking a simple 1-minute risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
Bet he can't say that in reverse.
GreatBasinHighway.com, Great Basin Highway magazine, radio show. Visit GreatBasinHighway.com and sign up for a free online subscription to our magazine.
Are you shy and don't want to talk on the air? Text us your questions or comments to 775-237-2266. Now back to the show.
We are back to the show. I'm Dr. Daniel Roy. You're listening to The Royal Treatment. My guest today is Dr. Michael Karfeld, who's a naturopathic physician in Boise, Idaho. He has a very busy integrated practice, and we thank him for joining us today. Before the break, we were talking about how he integrates the practice of naturopathic medicine with the treatment of cancer. I remember years ago, I had some patients who came to me. They were receiving the traditional chemotherapy treatments, and the only thing we did for them was to help offset some of the damage caused by chemotherapy, whereby the immune system is suppressed. Now, one of the ways your oncologist will check for this damage is to do regular, even weekly blood work, looking at your CBC, your complete blood count, to see if your red blood cells and your white blood cells have dropped too low. But one of the things that happened with these patients is they never had a problem with the blood work because, well, in between chemotherapy treatments, they would come in for IV nutritional therapy, particularly vitamin C, and it's helped to offset the downside or side effects, as you might call them, from chemotherapy. Well, Dr. Karfeld, I want to back up just a little bit. I know you have a background in a doctorate in addition, a PhD, in addition to your naturopathic degree. Could you tell us a little bit about what that involves?
Yeah, so that is more kind of a PhD is more kind of a study, meaning you're focusing on you get a little bit more advanced in a certain area, and my focus was then on natural healing, the different natural healing modalities that exist. So because I didn't want to become just hyper focused on my own profession, the naturopathy, which I love and I've been doing for many years. You want to be able to integrate what it is that you do with other practitioners, with other healing modalities, with other philosophies, and that's why I felt it was very important to do both pretty much at the same time, so that we could, so I could be more well-rounded in what I do as I work with patients.
Well, I think that's a good explanation. I like the fact that you have a dual degree. I have a dual degree. I'm licensed as a doctor of naturopathic medicine. I've also been licensed the last 30 years as a doctor of homeopathic medicine here in the state of Nevada. But I'm also licensed as an attorney. And I went back to law school. I obtained my degree because I did not feel like I understood how society really works. And going back to law school actually gave me a broader perspective on things, and of course more education, which I appreciate and I do use. I use that in addition to my legal degree. I use my medical degree. I use my legal degree for the bars. So for example, this last week we had a hearing, a disciplinary hearing for an attorney. Actually was a former judge here in Nevada. Very interesting story. And we're not here to talk about that, but I also use it in writing contracts and other types of agreements. So it's become very helpful. So having more education never hurts. It can only, I believe, provide you with more resources to use at disposal for the treatment of your patients, which is what I primarily do because I enjoy that most. I feel like it comes most natural to me, mostly because I've been involved with medicine since I was a youth, doing work in my father's office, developing x-rays and running thyroid tests when he was a doctor, a conventional doctor, but undergoing a transition to an alternative medical practice. Now, during the break, we talked a little bit about the state of naturopathy in the state of Idaho, and maybe you could just give us a little bit of background about what that looks like and what you're trying to do to change it.
Yeah, so currently Idaho's been one of those states where there's been kind of a lot of contention as to how the naturopathic licensing should look like, the legislation should look like. And so there's been different groups that's been kind of negotiating back and forth, and we were able to come to an agreement back in 2000, I believe it's 2005, where a piece of licensing legislation was passed, and we developed a board But then after that, it wasn't very effective, so that that law then got actually disseminated, or they voted it out again. So last year, we were able to, actually, not last session, it would have been the session before, there's a piece of naturopathic licensing that got passed. And the issue, there were some people that had a little issue with that law that got passed, because it would entail that the medical board would then oversee the naturopathic board. And a lot of us didn't feel that was, it didn't seem right to have I wouldn't say competitive, but someone that have a different philosophy to oversee somebody else's function. Yeah, so because naturopathic model versus medical model, they do differ in how they think. So we are currently now drafting legislation that will then create an additional board, naturopathic board, that is separate from the one that is under the oversight of the medical board. And we are hoping to be able to have that pass in this coming legislative session that starts in January here in Idaho.
Well, I know how difficult that is to be a lobbyist. I've been a lobbyist myself and worked to get legislation passed. It's a lot of work, but it's also very rewarding. And in my case, I did it voluntarily, and we didn't have to pay or donate to anybody's campaign or hire a lobbyist. And so if you're working to get things done on a shoestring, which I've not only done for the homeopathic board, but I've done for on behalf of the dentist that we're looking to get some things changed here in the state of Nevada, then you're going to have to roll up your sleeves to work. And it sounds like you're doing a lot of, and I applaud you for that. I'd be much happier having your independence, but hopefully you have some people who are willing to step up and to help regulate that profession, because once you get that board, well, your state government will be watching you very closely, and you'll probably have some enemies who'll be looking to take you down, as they always are, because in alternative medicine, or those of us practicing traditional forms of medicine, we're always having to look over our shoulder from our competitors. In fact, most of the complaints I find against conventional medical doctors are not from their patients, because we had a physician on our program a couple of weeks ago who talked about this very thing. The complaints come from your jealous professional colleagues, and they may or may not have merit. Usually, well, in the case of the physician we had in our program, it had nothing to do with any harm that had come to a patient. Simply, he had chosen to allow his patients to exercise their freedom, in this case, to refuse vaccinations, where such vaccinations are recommendations and not requirements. But nevertheless, it doesn't stop your jealous colleagues from complaining. So I hope that all goes well for you in your quest. Well, tell us a little bit about naturopathic medicine, how it differentiates itself from all the other medical arts like acupuncture, homeopathy, chiropractors, and so forth.
Well, naturopathy, and actually I have a podcast as well, or radio show as well, where and I interviewed Dr. Michael Murray just the other week. He's one of the leading naturopathic doctors, and I was asking him the same kind of question. You know, what is naturopathic medicine? And so I agree with his answer. It's I hold a very kind of liberal definition on it. You know, meaning that it is a modality that supports the body's own healing mechanism, using then nutritional or using a variation of different means that are supportive, restorative, and aligned with nature, with natural principles. So with that, a lot of naturopathic doctors, they include things like homeopathy. They include things like acupuncture, massage, manipulation. So these other type of modalities then becomes part of that umbrella of naturopathic medicine. Obviously, you have then homeopathic doctors such as yourself that becomes even more specialized in that field, and can then talk much more intelligently and can kind of go even deeper, within that field in itself. Or acupuncture the same, or chiropractic the same, or osteopathy. But so naturopathic medicine is just a modality to really use natural principles to make sure that an individual is stronger, healthier, and support natural processes that exist within the body.
Yeah, I think that's a common denominator among these traditional forms of medicine that are trying to work with the body to bring about its own healing. Certainly, that's a very important principle in homeopathy, where we're using energetic forms of medicine. You're using nutritional forms of medicine. And of course, acupuncture is another type of energy or energy balancing approach to the treatment of disease. And the chiropractors, actually the osteopaths as well, they focus on trying to find a balance between the somatic and visceral connections of the body, because the musculoskeletal dysfunctions can manifest as internal problems or imbalances. In fact, I had a patient in my office just this last week. He has some interesting history with his heart, saying that he's been diagnosed with congestive heart failure, although we weren't really able to confirm that in our office. He doesn't really have a shortness of breath. His energy is fine. He's got no peripheral edema. We did a blood test to check for his beta natriuretic peptide. It was completely normal. But the pain he's having in his back is coming from around T6, which has a relationship to the heart. And so we have to think about these things. But if you're trained in conventional medicine, guess what? You're not taught about how to modalities. And you mentioned that even naturopaths may include some approaches in addition to the treatment of their diseases using, let's say, nutrition and supplements. Perhaps they're also using some acupuncture, homeopathy, even bioidentical hormones. And so this synergistic approach seems to work the best. One of the best physicians that I ever knew, somebody I worked with during my internship, was an osteopathic physician who had also been a naturopathic physician. And that additional training allowed him to think a little more broad-mindedly and be a little more open-mindedly in the treatment of his patients, which helps us in the long run to solve problems that nobody else can. I'm Dr. Dan Royer. Listen to The Royal Tree. My guest today is Dr. Michael Harfield, a naturopathic physician in Boise, Idaho, with a very integrative, busy practice. We'll be back after the break. Stay with us. Would you like more energy? A photon sound beam may be the solution you need. A photon sound beam uses electrical energy to ionize gases that generate ozone and light to enter your body directly through the skin. The energy produced by a photon sound beam assists your body's healing process. It does this by improving the electrical energy of the body's cells. Get your photon sound beam by calling 702-444-LUCKY. The optimal cell voltage for the body's cells is between 70 and 100 millivolts. When cell voltage decreases below 60 millivolts, the cell becomes weakened and diseased. For example, cancer cells usually have a cell voltage below 30 millivolts. Call 702-444-LUCKY and order your photon sound beam today. A longer, healthier, and more vital life is only made possible with optimal cell voltage. The photon sound beam has also been found to be effective in relieving pain, inflammation, and joint stiffness, as well as improving immune function. Call 702-444-LUCKY and get a free quote for your photon sound beam. That number again is 702-444-5825.
No word in the English language is less convincing than probably.
Are you sure we should get matching tattoos on our first date?
Sure. We'll probably stay together.
Probably? It's been 23 minutes since I ate. I can probably swim.
You should wait 30 minutes.
Okay, now tell me what to do. Cannonball! Cramp! Oh, I have a cramp.
I can probably hit the green from here.
Probably.
Can I get a mulligan?
Ready to go?
Hey, are you sure you're okay to drive?
Yeah, I'm pretty sober. Yeah, I'm probably okay.
Probably okay isn't okay, especially when it comes to drinking and driving. If you're drinking, call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
You wanted to see me?
Yes, please, have a seat. So here's the thing. When this company brought you on, we took a chance on you. You didn't have that 4-year college degree we typically look for.
Right.
But we gave you a shot anyway. And since then, you've worked incredibly hard and given it your all.
Thanks.
You've been an important asset to the team, but I don't think you can be an intern here anymore. We want to hire you.
You're serious?
Absolutely.
Find your next great employee. Introduce yourself to the grads of life. Who are they? Talent worth knowing about. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
I won't let you down.
I know.
Don't miss out on a resource many innovative companies have already discovered. Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Want to expand your advertising dollar? Sponsor this or any America Matters program by calling 775-827-8900, extension 2. Now back to the show.
We are back to the show. I'm Dr. Daniel Royal, and you're listening to The Royal Treatment. We're here every week to answer your health questions, and hopefully we're doing that for you today and having some fun in the process. My goal for you, the listeners, is that you learn one new thing. Just one, when you listen to our program. And if you've learned just one new thing, then your time with us has been well spent. I've been reading some books recently. Maybe you're familiar with the Killing Kennedy, Killing Lincoln series written by Bill O'Reilly. And they're very interesting books if you like history. But again, my goal when I read a book like that is just like listening to this program, is to learn one new thing from reading that book. I got that from a motivational speaker years ago because, of course, as physicians, we attend a lot of seminars. And so my hope in attending a seminar is that I would come home learning at least one new thing, because that one new thing could be $1 million idea. You never know. Well, if you need to reach me, Dr. Daniel Royal, you can always call the Turtle Healing Bank Clinic here in Las Vegas at 702-562-1454, 702-562-1454, or email me directly at droyal@thbclinic.com. D as in Daniel Royal, ROYAL @THB for Turtle Healing Bank Clinic.com. We're here to provide you with the health you need to optimize your health and well-being. In fact, we had a patient in our office today who is here for that very purpose, complaining of allergies and digestional complaints. We have lots of ways, means by which we can help you naturally, as we've been talking about with Dr. Michael Carfield, to achieve just those kinds of results. So continue our discussion, Dr. Michael. What about your patients? Do you have any interesting patient cases you would like to share with us?
Well, I mean, it's always one fascinating patient that comes to mind. I mean, and this is to understand how sometimes through the medical model, a disease pattern or symptoms can be very difficult to treat. But when you look at it holistically and you make the correct changes, you see dramatic results. So for instance, I had a little young girl dealing with migraines for a year, and she's gone to 13 different doctors, and including neurologists that are going to put her on anti-seizure medications, done MRIs, done all possible things to try to figure out how to resolve this migraine. So she came into my office, and I was able then to identify that there were two different allergens. It was corn and egg that she was dealing with, and then supported the digestive system a little bit to kind of reduce inflammation along the intestinal tract. And within a week's time, her migraines were gone, and she hasn't had migraine since. So it's just to show that just because you have more advanced technology doesn't mean that with that advanced technology, you're able to pinpoint better.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, the way that conventional medicine typically handles a case like that is they rush the patient off for a CAT scan or MRI or both to diagnose a brain tumor. Not everybody has a migraine has a brain tumor. In fact, most people don't. This is how my father got into alternative medicine, treating people that had allergies like that, who were having migraines, and they improved by using a homeopathic desensitization approach to the treatment of these allergies. So, for example, the patient in my office today is having some allergy symptoms. Now, the urgent care physician who saw him simply prescribed medications. He gave him Claritin for his sinuses, although the patient's sinuses are perfectly clear. He gave him a H2 blocker for his stomach because he was saying, well, you're having reflux and that could result in your allergies. But what we'll do for a patient like this is we'll draw his blood and we'll check to see if he really is having allergies. You can do a very simple screen by ordering an IgG or immunoglobulin E to see if they're having any kind of immediate reactions, and that kind of gives you an idea as to whether they're having IgE reactions. But there are many other types of allergy you can have, delayed allergies such as IgG, and you can also look at the CBC to see if he's producing eosinophils, which is another sign of allergies. And I'm sure you know if those eosinophils are too high, you start thinking about parasites. But one of the tests we like to use is the ELISA ACT test. We like that test because it's a little different type of allergy test. It is not overwhelming for the patient, so it will not pick up, let's say, 30 to 40 things they have to deal with, but it might pick up anywhere, let's say, from 4 to 8, depending on what you order. It uses a lymphocytic reaction assay, so you can see how the white blood cells are responding to what it's exposed to. And it's the only test I know where we can actually not only check for foods, but for chemicals, colorings, flavorings, additives, even pesticides, molds, and so forth. So depending on how wide a net you want to cast, you can pick up some things, more things, but the things you pick up with that test we find to be real. I remember years ago, a patient came in with migraine headaches, and this is something else you might want to think about. Yes, it certainly could be related to allergies, and I agree it's a very common reaction. Headaches are a very common toxic reaction to our diet, but it's also possible the patient has had injuries in the past. So in this case, the patient had been in a car accident years ago, had whiplash, and what that does is it leaves the patient with a weakness in the ligaments that hold the neck to the body. And there's a very common area we inject at the back of the head to try to tighten that up. And we use prolotherapy for doing it. So when we say prolotherapy, we're using a solution, as you probably know, that creates a localized inflammation to attract the cells the body needs to make new tissue. That's why it's called proliferation or prolotherapy. And it can be done using something as simple as concentrated sugar water or concentrated salt water. But you can also use platelet-rich plasma, stem cells, amniosomes, and so forth. In this case, we just did a series of prolotherapy injections, and her headaches, in this case, migraines, disappeared, never to return. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and we use that frequently here at our center. Well, it's such powerful medicine to support the regeneration of the tissue versus normally when a patient's dealing with an unresolving pain and they go to the medical doctor and they shoot them with cortisone, which is a catabolic substance, which means that it then breaks down the tissue. I mean, yes, it helps with reducing the inflammation, but at the end of the day, it will then make the tissue weaker than it was prior to the treatment. So obviously, as an athlete or an aging individual, you don't want to have weaker tissue, you want to have stronger tissue. And that's when therapies like what you mentioned, the prolotherapy, or some people use, and also prolozone, which we inject then ozone, do a little procaine with maybe B12 and other nutrients into the space, and then follow with ozone. And that will then trigger, it will reduce inflammation, trigger tissue repair, drive stem cells to the location, and increase and also growth factors in that area. Or like you mentioned, the PRP, stem cell, amniotic membrane. And what we do here at the center also is that we follow that actually with intra-articular laser therapy. So where we can actually bring in an optic laser into the area where we injected the stem cell or the PRP, and that actually enhances the effect of the stem cells and can do it up to like 20 times. I mean, it's really amazing when you do that in combination.
Yeah, it's been proven that when you create disturbance in the area of injury, whether it's done by prolotherapy or in your case, the laser, that it attracts stem cells to the area to help repair the damage, also to differentiate. It can be done, well, in this case, the study was using an acoustic compression therapy, which is really sound wave technology. So the patient we had in our office this last week, where we used a proprietary form of stem cells that we harvest from the blood, but we combine that with his plasma and amniosomes, along with using a stimulation that results from a plasma field. Plasma field is generated from a photon sound beam that has the ground, and then an electrode that generates photons and ozone. And this can be used directly on the area of injury. Interestingly enough, we've had many patients, even after one treatment, which could be as short as anywhere from 5 minutes to, let's say, 24 minutes, get up and walk out being completely pain-free. sometimes that pain-free can be permanent just from using that particular type of disturbance. Now, years ago, I was in Europe. I had some treatment actually in Austria, or training, I should say, both training and treatment from Dr. Eric Rauch. He was a follower of Dr. Franz Meyer, who developed the Meyer cure over there, where people become healthier through reducing the size, shape, function of their gut, but they use it for weight loss. He wrote a book called Health Through Inner Body Cleansing. And they do some things over there in naturopathy that may be a little bit different over there, such as Knipe therapy, which involves, I believe, walking on rocks in water. In fact, in the book I recently finished called Killing England, it talked about Thomas Jefferson, one of the founders of our country. And one of the things he did every morning, which he believed was good for his health, was he soaked his feet in cold water. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so the Knipe therapies, the sitz bath, those are really powerful therapies, and I think they're very underutilized here. And it's like you mentioned, walking in cold water on stones, but then also you have them where you sit in a bathtub where you're just gonna have the pelvic area in cold water, and that in itself will then impact circulation, remove congestion. So there are very specific therapies that you can use, with the Knipe water therapies, and it's powerful. And those are things that we should learn more about. It's simple and cheap.
Yeah, those kind of things that probably work best in a spa type facility. In fact, that's where these were being performed. I don't know how practical it is to have it in a medical office, but some of these things are simple enough to be done at home, such as soaking your feet in water. Or, well, years ago, I had a Russian physician who came to my father's office for some training. And one of the things that he did was he walked in the early morning grass when the dew was on it, similar to soaking your feet in cold water, to help stimulate his body and improve his health. I'm Dr. Daniel Royer. Listen to The World Treatment. My daily guest today is Dr. Michael Karfeld. He's a busy naturopathic physician in Boise, Idaho. We're going to take a short break, but we'll be back. Stay with us. Did you know that 4,000 years ago, the Earth's magnetic field was 5 Gauss? Over the last 165 years, scientists have measured the Earth's magnetic field and found that today it is only 0.5 Gauss, a decrease of 90%. However, your brain needs the Earth's magnetic field to restore energy to your cells. The good news is that a magnetic sleep pad can give your brain what it needs to restore energy to your cells. Order your magnetic sleep pad by calling 702-444-LUCKY. Think of the magnetic sleep pad as a powerful engine in your car. It gets you up hills faster and with less wear and tear. With the magnetic sleep pad, your brain now has the energy it needs to repair your damaged cells, make enzymes, enhance immunity, and protect you against electrosmog, all while you sleep. Get your magnetic sleep pad by calling 702-444-LUCKY. Studies have shown that the magnetic sleep pad can help improve pain, sleep, fatigue, energy, and concentration. Get a free quote for your magnetic sleep pad by calling 702-444-LUCKY. That number again is 702-444-5825.
So here's the choice. Some people say the USA is finished. It's evil, a has-been, full of hate and injustice. The U.S. Constitution should be trashed and the Bill of Rights abolished. No free speech, no gun ownership. Competition and free markets are bad. We're all too stupid. For our own good, the government must own everything and know all your secrets.
Other people say that America has created the freest, richest, happiest, most generous society that has ever existed in the world. That's why millions of people are desperate to come here and escape their brutal lives in Cuba, Venezuela, North Korea, and 100 other countries.
In America, we have the right to succeed, the right to our own living, the right to have a family, the right to believe in God, the right to have our own ideas, the right to be safe and secure, and the right to be left alone.
Where do you stand? Help us save the Constitution and restore the American dream. Go to SaveMyFreedom.com.
Brought to you by the American Media Council.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet.
Rich is texting and driving. Rich? No. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Unable to listen to the whole show? A recording of today's program will be available later today. Visit americamatters.us and click on the podcast link. Now back to the show.
We are back to the show, and thank you, my friend, for sticking with us. We're now in the final fourth quarter of our show with Dr. Michael Karfeld, naturopathic physician in Boise, Idaho, who practices integrative medicine. I suppose I could say I practice integrative medicine because, well, I'm licensed as both an osteopathic physician, which allows me to prescribe prescriptions or dangerous drugs, as they are classified, to patients who may need them. But I also practice a natural approach to the treatment of my patients. And this is why I'm licensed as a tribal provider with the First Nation Medical Board on the jurisdiction of the Crow Tribe of Indians. It's part of an economic development for that tribe who have stepped up to regulate the practice of an exercise jurisdiction over traditional medicine in the United States. And we thank them for that. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me at droyal@thbclinic.com. D as in Daniel Royal, ROYAL at THB for Turtle Healing Band Clinic.com, or call us at the Turtle Healing Band Clinic, 702-562-1454, 702-562-1454. And now back to our guest, Dr. Karfeld. Dr. Karfeld, what else have you observed with your patients you would like to share with us?
Well, I mean, another patient is another young girl that I had that came with just body pains, fatigue, couldn't figure out what was going on. Everything looked perfectly fine. They did normal blood labs, CBC, CMP, test thyroid. And as you know, frequently a medical doctor, when they test thyroid, all the test is the TSH, which is a thyroid stimulating hormone produced by the pituitary. So they don't do an extensive panel on the thyroid to really look and see what's going on. So I was curious as to kind of look a little bit more. And so what I did is that we did a full panel then on the thyroid, which includes TSH, T3, T4, reverse T3. You also check antibodies of thyroid. And I'm seeing that more and more nowadays. I don't know how it is in your clinic, but I'm seeing more and more people dealing with autoimmune conditions where the immune system is attacking the thyroid. So there you have things like Hashimoto's, Graves' disease. And so this young girl, come to find out, her antibodies on the thyroid antibodies were quite high. And in addition to that, her Epstein-Barr viral load was very high as well. So at looking at it then from a naturopathic view, then you're thinking then, well, probably the Epstein-Barr is triggering the immune system to become overactive. And sometimes you can have viruses or pathogens that hide in certain tissues like the thyroid, and the immune system is then trying to go after that pathogen within the thyroid tissue and then start to then go after, kill the thyroid in an attempt to get rid of the virus. So our goal was then to start to bring down then the viral load to see if we could relieve stress then from the immune system. And what we did is that we used a intravenous photosensitizer called riboflavin, which is just vitamin B2, and followed that with a laser therapy, intravenous laser therapy. And riboflavin is it's a photosensitizer for blue and ultraviolet. So what happens then is that photosensitizer attaches itself to the virus, and then as the intravenous optic cable treats the blood every time the blood passes by, it gets treated and blasted then with the laser, which means that in an hour's time of treatment, you can treat your whole blood volume, and it's about 60 times. So using then ultraviolet and blue, and we were able then to bring down within a week that viral load to almost normal, and her energy was great. Her no aches and pains, and she was feeling amazing. And what was fascinating is while we're doing that, she was getting kind of sores in her skin, meaning, so as you're killing things off inside, and this is another homeopathic and naturopathic principle, that I start from within and then it goes out, and from above and then below. And so there are certain kind of processes that diseases have. So as we're then seeing things popping up in the skin, different sores, then we knew that we were very effective to treat things on the inside. So we didn't want to then halt the treatment. We didn't want to put on steroid creams on these sores and try to control that, because all you would do at that time is drive the disease back in. So we continued with treatment and then added things then to just support to mop up some of these chemicals and toxins that are being released as we're killing off the pathogen. And so it's just another example of powerful tools that exist within these kind of integrative clinics. And I have a little bit of I don't like the word integrative that much. I don't like complementary. I don't like alternative. These are words we commonly use. I mean, I feel that the therapies we do, like you mentioned in the beginning, it's been around much longer. So I don't know why it would be an alternative, because it's been on its own for thousands of years. And it's not a complementary because it is something that is its own therapy, its own medicine. So it's not just something, it's not a condiment you add to the meal. It is a meal in itself. So it is important, I think, for the listeners to understand the power of naturopathic medicine and holistic medicine. So it's not just something that you can add to, it's something that stands on its own.
Yeah, good points. In terms of observing our patients, Americans and maybe people in general are very impatient, but Harry's Law of the Cure says that we know we're on the right path when symptoms are proceeding from the top down, the inside out, and in reverse order by which they came. These are things that we know as, well, I should say, alternative, naturopathic, holistic physicians. The conventional medicine physicians do not know, do not observe, because they're not working with the body to achieve optimal health and wellness. We should perhaps call ourselves the polar opposites. We're looking to help our patients achieve optimal health and wellness versus conventional medicine is simply a sick care disease management system that has no intention of helping you to be healthier, perhaps just delaying the inevitable. One of the things that you mentioned that is, well, not routinely checked, at least thoroughly, that is the thyroid. I had a young, healthy man in my office recently, and we just got his labs back, and guess what? Well, his thyroid is inadequate. He's not making enough, but he also has an autoimmune reaction with elevated thyroid antibodies. We also find that sometimes the patient will have a normal thyroid test, but their reverse T3 will be elevated. That means that they're making a type of active thyroid that is, well, artificial and not helping them. So there's all kinds of ways and means by which you might diagnose hypothyroidism, and for which the patient might need supplementation, for which we prefer to use the natural thyroid, of course. The other thing that we test, as did you, was Epstein-Barr virus. We'll look at the early antigen or antigen G to see if it's active. We find that about half of our patients are walking around with elevated Epstein-Barr, active Epstein-Barr, I should say, because most everybody's been exposed to mono when they were younger. The problem is when the Epstein-Barr is active, lots of things can happen. And you mentioned the thyroid possibly being one of them, but it is a cancer-causing virus and needs to be taken seriously. And conventional medicine doctors don't check for it because they have nothing really to treat viruses like this. So why even bother? We found that one of the things that needs to be done for our patients is to check their nagalase to see how high that is, because viruses in cancer will produce enzymes to inhibit the immune system from recognizing them and eliminating them. And so one of the things that need to be done is to eliminate that smoke screen. And this can be done through a natural product for which we published a study early this year. It can be found at ACIresearch.org, ACIMresearch.org. It is a study where we looked at over 30 patients who successfully were able to lower their nagalase using an oral product called Orasal. Well, we got a few minutes left, so Let's talk about anything else you think might be interesting in regards to the treatment of patients. What else have you got for us?
Well, I mean, I think an important principle to really address, and I'm sure you've addressed that in your prior episodes, is the principle of detoxification and opening up your eliminatory pathways. A lot of people think that detoxification just means that you go after the liver and you throw milk thistle at the person. But what is important to understand is that you need to open up the eliminatory pathways when you detoxify. You need to, the human body was created in such a way that we have one way in and four ways out. So it means how, the way we're created, how important it is that we can move these toxins out of the system. So we need to make sure your gut is functioning properly. So your elimination of toxins through the colon, through your kidneys, through your skin, through your lungs. So anytime you're addressing any kind of health issues, it is foundational and fundamental to make sure that these eliminatory pathways are open. And then you can move into detoxification of, supporting the liver, supporting, and sometimes even if you use nutrients to turn on the mitochondria, and that will then initiate your body's ability to detoxify. But then if your eliminatory pathways are not open, you're just kind of shuffling metals and chemicals around, and that can then make you feel even worse. So it's just one of those principles that I really would like to emphasize.
Well, thank you very much for those concluding remarks. We had a patient in our office today where we addressed this very issue, putting the good in and eliminating the bad, which can be done, of course, through the skin, through the breath, through the digestion, and, of course, the urination. I'm Dr. Daniel Royal. I want to thank Dr. Michael Karpel for being with us today, busy naturopathic physician in Boise, Idaho. We'll be back again next week with another episode of the Royal Treatment. But until then, my friends, may you all be well.
Take a look under your bed. Find stuff under there? What about jobs? No? Now try your basement. There's a pair of overalls that overall you're not